carry on Constitution. Chapter 1.
13 people were standing at the port of the observation lounge aboard the Defender-class USS Enterprise, looking out at the 10 Constitution Class Heavy Cruisers clustered around the more massive ship. The 10 ships were the entire complement of Constitution Class Heavy Cruisers presently on active commission in the System Navy. The group in the lounge consisted of the captains of the 10 ships and several command-grade officers: Fleet Admiral Tim Halloran, Commodore Sorrell, Commodore Tfaz, Sorrell's Chief Surgeon, Commodore Jerry Clausen, Commodore Richard R. Terry, Captain David Stevens, Captain Robert O'Reilly, David's Chief Engineer, Captain John Self, Captain Jenny Olson, Captain William Walker, Captain Chall, Captain Barbara Jenkins, and Captain George Perry, Captain of the host ship, the USS Enterprise. The group grew restless, waiting for the arrival of the 14th officer. As they waited, small groups began to form. The first to gather were the officers who were present or former members of the crew of the Enterprise. George Perry, Chall, Bill Walker, and David Stevens began to catch up on the events of their friends' lives. After a short moment, Admiral Halloran and Captain O'Reilly joined that group. Soon afterward, they were joined by Jerry Clausen, who began talking about the robots of New Earth and the mock board of inquiry that David endured. Tim began telling about Alterus and everything they experienced. David chimed in with the message from the Chief of Naval Operations concerning the board of inquiry and his anxiety. They were then interrupted. A voice with a severe Russian accent came.
I am sorry, Captain Stevens, but we did catch those responsible for many wrongs in the Navy.
Tim and O'Reilly exclaimed,
Maravich! Maravich!
Maravich.
They grabbed the Admiral's hand and shook it until Darian thought he would lose it. Tim spoke up.
Darian, Dave was tied up in knots. You could have at least warned us.
Darian replied.
Those responsible hit ace and ears everywhere. I had to play it close to my chest until I could prove who the culprits were.
Tim lifted an eyebrow, but Darian continued.
Captain Stevens' anxiety was not good, but we finished the investigation and rounded up the perpetrators. I would have gone on and hit the captain's sword martialet if it meant catching those renegades.
Then Admiral Halloran asked.
Admiral Maravich, would you, now, tell us why you have called all of us together today?
The Chief of Naval Operations replied.
You should know that the system has been sending command probes throughout the galaxy over the past 500 years. We have received a great deal of data over the years. However, since we do not have immediate control over the probes due to the distance, we need human eyes to investigate some things a little closer. So, the System Council has charged me with sending you to explore some of these areas, and I am giving our Constitution Class Heavy Cruisers this mission. Admiral Halloran, I would like for you to command the fleet, and Jerry will be your deputy if you choose to go. You may remain in this sector if you wish. You're the only officer I am giving the option. What do you say, Tim?
Tim asked.
Well, this is going to be a truly deep space mission. What are our limitations? May we include our families, or must we leave them behind?
Darian answered.
Admiral, your ship's complement may include such family members as you have room for. That is strictly up to each captain and each family.
Tim smiled.
Good. In that case, I'll go.
Darian exclaimed.
Excellent.
Tim addressed the group.
I would like Commodores Clausen, Sorrell, Tfaz, and Terry to meet with Admiral Maravich and me this evening about 2100 to develop our strategy. If that is okay with you, George.
Captain Perry replied.
Admiral, consider the Enterprise your ship.
Tim said.
Thank you, George. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope to depart at 0600 in the morning. Dismissed.
The group snapped to attention and then began to exit the lounge. David and Bill looked at each other and shrugged their shoulders.
I guess I'll teleport over to my ship, Dave. I'll see you later.
David responded, Okay, see you, Bill. About that time, Captain Chall walked over to David.
We have time for a little exercise if you would like, Captain.
David replied, I hadn't thought of that, Captain Chall. I would be honored. With that, the two captains set off to one of the holographic chambers to exercise. The rest of the men and women left the lounge on missions of their own. Maravich started to go when Tim caught his arm.
Darian, what is it you are not telling us?
Admiral Maravich frowned.
I don't know what you mean, Tim. There is nothing else that I can tell you.
Tim said, Darian, we've been friends too long for this. Are you sending the entire fleet of Constitution Class Heavy Cruisers on an exploratory mission? The most powerful ships in the system Navy. With me in command? I don't think so. I may be old, but I am not senile. What are you not telling us?
Darian said.
Tim, let's go to my cabin.
With that, the two old friends walked out of the lounge and entered Admiral Maravich's cabin. Darian motioned for silence and ordered the computer to scan for listening devices. When assured that there were none, he said,
Tim, the data we have been receiving was of interest only to dusty old scientists up to this last year. Ever since our probes have crossed the orbit of P-387, the data indicates only dead systems.
Shocked, Tim asked.
Dead systems, like Alterus?
Darian replied, grimly.
That there were signs of civilizations, but no life. No living thing, like Alterus, but with no evidence of weapons of mass destruction. We need human is to examine and find the cause.
Tim almost whispered.
But Darian, P-387 is 6 months away from here at Ultralight 14. Why are you sending the 10 most powerful ships in the Navy? What if we are needed back here?
The Chief of Naval Operations replied.
Our Defender class heavy cruisers are being retrofitted with the Captian Stevens shields, the real Wilson improved ultralight engines, and the Ultras plasma cannons as quickly as Cerebral. There are 6 John Paul Jones class dreadnoughts in the shipyards only a few months from being space-worthy.
Surprised, Tim asked.
6 new ships.
Darian replied.
Yes. 6.
Tim asked.
But Darian, we had to scour the quadrant to find captains and crews for the Constitution Class Heavy Cruisers we have just recommissioned. Where are we going to get captains and crews for 6 more ships in just a few months?
Darian responded.
We have accelerated promotions for some outstanding officers. We have issued recall orders for some who have retired. And we are in the process of reviewing source martial records for those who may have been railroaded like those brought up on charges by Admirals Chavis and Long. We will have the captains and crews for those ships when it comes time to carry mission TRM.
Then Admiral Halloran asked.
Darian, what about the deserving officers who are in the fleet you're sending to the Galactic Center? We have many good officers who deserve a ship, like Larry Sorensen?
Darian shrugged.
The mission comes first, Admiral.
Tim answered.
Aye, sir.
Darian smiled.
Don't worry, Tim. We will be building the JPJ class dreadnoughts at this accelerated speed for a few years yet. Those deserving officers will get their ship when the mission is completed.
Tim replied.
All right, I can live with that.
Darian turned.
Tim, I'm going to the lounge. Care to join me?
After you, Admiral.
Was Tim's reply. With that, the 2 officers left Darian's cabin and ran into Captains Chal and Stevens, sweating, laughing, and pounding each other on the back for a good workout. Tim turned to Darian.
Those 2 work out together using Charles' calisthenics program.
Darian said.
The Centurion idea of calisthenics.
Tim nodded.
Yes. I understand that they warm up at level 6 and then go to level 8 and cool off at level 7.
Darian said.
Remind me not to cross those 2.
But Tim answered.
Darian, they're 2 pussycats. Dave is a lover, and Chal is a man of honor. They are very likely the 2 officers you can always count on for their loyalty more than any other. And when you are counting them with George, Bill, and O'Reilly, you're saying a lot.
With that, the 2 friends entered the lounge and chose a table in a far corner of the room. As they sat nursing 2 rather mundane drinks, an ensign approached the table.
Admiral Maravich, Admiral Halloran, Captain Perry's compliments. Would you please join him for dinner in his cabin this evening?
Tim asked.
Did the captain say what time?
The ensign answered.
Sir, he said at your convenience, but he did mention 1830.
The 2 admirals replied.
Thank you, Ensign. Please tell the captain that we would be pleased to join him at 18:30.
The ensign saluted and left. At that time, Tim noticed that David had entered the room.
Darian, I would like to speak to Captain Stevens. Would you mind if you joined us for a moment?
Darian replied.
Not at all. Call him over.
Tim stood and called David, signaling for him to join the two admirals. David felt that it would be prudent to join his superiors and so walked to their table. Admiral, what can I do for you? Tim answered.
David, can you join us for a moment? I would like to talk to you.
The captain replied. I can sit for a little while. Stella will be joining me in a few minutes, Tim said.
Fine. Dave, I want you to join our group this evening. We have been through the whole Alteris affair, and I trust your judgment.
David replied, Thank you, sir. Tim went on.
Dave, we will need some fresh ideas. You and your crew are used to new ideas. I will need a whole fleet of new ideas.
What kind of ideas, sir? David asked. Tim responded.
Ideas like the Champion/Stevens shield generators. Ideas like scanning the sea under the polar ice cap. How do I know what kind of ideas? Your crew is used to coming up with new ideas. We are going to need every man and woman in the fleet thinking and trying new ideas if we are going to succeed in our mission.
A look of concern crossed David's face. Why, what's going on? I thought it was purely exploratory. Tim replied.
I can't tell you right now. But take my word for it, we will need every resource we can muster.
David saw Stella and said, Oh, there's my wife, sir. Will you excuse me, please? I'll be there, Tim said.
Certainly, see you later.
With that, David rose, walked over to where Stella waited for him. He kissed her gently and took her arm and led her to a table. Tim turned to Darian.
Now, there is the woman who fought to join her man over 500 years. What do you think?
Darian smiled a wistful smile.
She is really quite lovely in a subtle way. She must be Russian.
Tim laughed.
You old Russian dog. You still have a good eye.
A smirk crossed Darian's face.
I may be old, like you, but I am not dead yet. We Russians have always appreciated beauty. Especially beautiful women.
Checking his watch, Tim announced.
Well, Darian. It's time to join the good captain for dinner.
So, the two officers left the lounge and knocked on Captain Perry's cabin door. The captain led his two distinguished guests in and began to prepare the meal. George had obtained several pounds of real Texas beef and several real Idaho potatoes. The three men ate their dinner with genuine relish. After the meal, they began to talk over a little brandy. Captain Perry asked,
Admiral Marovich, when can I expect some replacements? You have fairly well devastated my staff of senior officers.
Marovich answered,
You will receive your replacements when they graduate from the academy. But you are about to lose another of your senior officers.
George groaned.
Who this time? I only have 4 officers over the rank of Lieutenant J.G.
Darian answered,
Commander Trena. Since she chose to pursue a command career, my staff has been watching her very closely. She will soon be promoted to captain and given command of her own Defender Class Heavy Cruiser.
Tim broke in.
Well, George, Darian, it's almost time for us to meet with our planning group and set our strategy for the coming mission. You may join us if you like, George.
George replied.
Thank you, Admiral, but I believe I had better get back to commanding the Enterprise. Let me show you out.
With that, Tim and Darian strode to the observation lounge to meet with their other officers and begin to plan for the upcoming mission. When they arrived, they found the Commodores and Captain Stevens waiting for them.
Good evening, lady and gentlemen.
Began Tim Halloran.
Let's begin with Admiral Marovich telling us the real urgency behind our mission. Admiral.
Admiral Marovich responded.
Like I told the group this afternoon, we have been receiving data from our onboard probes for the past 500 years. What I didn't tell you was that since the probes we have sent toward the galactic center past the orbit of P-387, the data that has been returned to us indicates nothing but dead systems. The probes are light years apart, but as they pass the orbit of P-387, they all indicate dead systems. Systems that once had flourishing civilizations but now have no life at all. Since we cannot immediately control the progress, we have to have human is, no enforcement, Commodore Sorrel, T. Vass.
T. Vass responded.
None taken, Admiral.
Darien went on.
As I was saying, we need intelligent ace to investigate this phenomenon and report back.
Halloran broke in.
As you can see, we may have something we need to counteract in the future. It would be a great advantage to know just what it is. And so, we are taking these 10 Constitution Class Heavy Cruisers and investigate. We have the range, we have the speed, and we have the personnel who know what it means to face the unknown. Darien, do you have any ideas on how we ought to approach this mission?
With a shrug, Darien replied.
No, I was hoping this group would be able to map out a strategy for the mission.
Commodore Sorrel spoke up.
Well, first of all, it is going to take 6 months at Ultralight 14 just to reach P387. So, what we need to do right now is to develop a broad outline of our strategy. We can refine it while we are en route to P387.
The group worked until well after midnight and then broke up, having a broad plan to begin with. Admiral Halloran briefed the other captains and then reminded them that they start departing at 0600 in the morning. 0500 and David was up, dressed, and just finishing a light breakfast when Stella woke.
How long have you been up, dear?
David replied, "Oh, since about 0430. You know me, I'm antsy until we get underway." Stella smiled.
I guess I had better get up. We'll be leaving in an hour.
David left their cabin and walked to the personnel lift, bridge. Stella got up, dressed, and then went in and woke little Davy. She got him dressed and fed him and then took him to the ship's nursery. There, little Davy joined the children of the families who were on the day watch. She kissed the boy and left for the bridge.
Captain on the bridge!
Called the first officer as David stepped out of the personnel lift. David responded, "As you were." "Larry, are we ready to depart?" Larry replied,
Just about, Captain. Just as soon as our helm officer arrives, we will have the entire day's shift on duty, ready to start our mission.
David and his first officer discussed the mission and settled a few administrative details. At about 5 minutes before 0600, Stella stepped from the turbo lift and assumed her place at the helm. David turned to the communication station. "Any word from the Admiral, yet?"
No, sir.
But then Lieutenant Jensen said.
Admiral Halloran on the comm for you, Captain.
David responded, on screen. "Good morning, Admiral." Tim looked relaxed.
Good morning, Dave. All set?
Stevens replied, "Yes, sir. All set and raring to go." Tim went on.
As soon as John and the Constellation have moved away from the Enterprise, you and the Constitution will begin the mission.
David answered, "Aye, sir." Tim said.
Well, Dave, calm seas and fair winds.
David replied, "Calm seas, Admiral." Constitution out. Lieutenant Jensen again, Captain, Admiral Maravich on the comm. Again, David replied, on screen. "Good morning, Admiral." Darien smiled from the screen.
Good morning, Dave. I just called to wish you Godspeed. Calm seas and fair winds, Constitution.
David replied, "Thank you, sir." Calm seas, Admiral. Constitution out. Lieutenant Jensen again.
You're very popular this morning, Captain. Captain Perry for you.
David smiled at his former captain, on screen. "Good morning, George." Captain Perry replied.
Dave, just wishing each ship and crew the best of luck.
David answered, "Thanks. I wish the same for you and my friends on the Enterprise. Please tell Reg I'm sorry I missed him this time around. And greet Stephen for me." Perry answered.
I'll do that. Calm seas and fair winds.
Again, David replied, "Calm seas." Constitution out. Lieutenant Jensen, again.
One more time, Captain, Admiral Halloran.
David said, on screen. "Yes, Admiral?" Tim waved.
It's now your turn. Shove off.
David waved back, "Aye, aye, sir." Constitution out. Lieutenant Stevens, back us away from the Enterprise, maneuvering thrusters only. Stella echoed.
Maneuvering thrusters only. Backing away, aye, sir.
The stately old heavy cruiser began to move back away from the Enterprise and the rest of her sister ships. As she slowly began to turn to, the mighty ship began to move forward and away from the cluster. As she cleared the main group of ships, she began to slip into ultralight drive and sped toward the galactic center.